So last week we had a couple of instances of the Indian and Chinese troops squaring off at a couple of sites in India. One was, of course, in eastern Ladakh and then in northern Sikkim. What to make of this confrontation, which, according to reports, also was physical in nature, and there was some stone pelting that was reported. So what do we make of this? To talk about that, I have with me Jaideep Mazumdar. Jaideep, over to you.
Thanks, Karan. See, these sort of incidents do happen. It's not the first time that this has happened. They have been happening quite regularly. Most of the time, what it doesn't result in is the marpeat or the physical violence that has happened. This time, of course, it was pretty ugly. Like, there was a lot of stone pelting, and it went on. The one in eastern Ladakh went on for a few hours. In northern Sikkim went on for a couple of hours. Usually, let me take you through what usually happens. We have a long border. It's called the line of actual control. It's largely undemarcated, all undemarcated, and all disputed. Okay, most of the places is disputed, especially Ladakh, and on the other hand, Arunachal and the eastern side. So, since there are no physical demarcations of which is the border, or the LAC, patrols of each other, of both India and China, they at times strain to accidentally or deliberately, the Chinese do it deliberately, come over to our side. Okay. Now, what happens is when, suppose the Chinese have come over and India gets to know that the Chinese have come over, our soldiers go there and they form a human chain and they physically stop the Chinese from proceeding further into Indian territory. And the Chinese also know that the Indians will be resisting. Here, no one carries arms. Even if they carry, it will be small arms. Okay. So, and when they come and touch face to face, whatever small arms or whatever arms is being carried will be pointed in a non-aggressive posture, which is the nozzle pointed towards the ground. That's a non-aggressive posture. So this has been, and what they do is they hold a banner drill. The Indian side has these banners written in Mandarin and English saying that you have come into our territory, this is our territory, please go back. When the Chinese, when we stray accidentally into what the Chinese believe is their territory, they also hold up banners in Hindi and English saying that, you have come into our territory and please go back. And at times this banner drill goes on for a few minutes, at times for a couple of hours, and then the senior officers, they intervene and there's a truce which is worked out, and most of the time these are they let go of this. And at times, if it gets a bit serious, if the standoff continues for a few hours, it's taken up at the border meetings, at the regular border meetings that we have. As per protocol, we have with the Chinese. At regular intervals, it happens at certain designated places along the LAC. Okay, but this time it got, this is not the first time. But it happened last September, and before that in 2018 as well, and 2017 as well, mostly in the Ladakh sector. Now,
Right, Jaideep. So what is unusual is the fact that this time there was that it happened in the Sikkim region, isn't it? Isn't that a bit unusual?
yes, true. That's true. Sikkim is largely, it's not claimed by China. China has never laid any claims over Sikkim, unlike, say, Arunachal. So Sikkim, things are pretty cool and normal. In fact, in eastern Sikkim, we have Nathula, through which border trade also goes on. Nakula, which is right on top, northern Sikkim, has not seen any hostilities ever. This is the first time that this has happened, and a lot of people say that maybe there is something more to it, like happening so close to each other, on the heels of each other. It happened in eastern Ladakh on the intervening night of May 5th and 6th last week, and this happened on Saturday, which is the 9th of May. And usually such standoffs don't happen, at so close to each other. Maybe the Chinese are trying to pass on a message. China is, that's what people say. Strategists and military experts say that maybe China is cornered. So at the global stage and over the coronavirus thing. And so it wants, it wants to, they want to serve a warning to India that do not go with the US and other countries which want to punish China. It wants to send Chinese are, one has to understand the Chinese psyche. It's very interesting how they operate. They don't do anything very blatantly, except of course they do it in the South China Sea. They are doing things very blatantly. But generally, they operate very subtly. And this may be a very subtle way of sending a message to India that, do not do what you're doing with blocking Chinese investments, all that protectionism or stopping Chinese goods from coming over or boycotting Chinese goods, which many Indians are doing. So this could be a subtle message sent. What has also happened is in the past, I'm talking about more than 5 years ago, more than 6-7 years ago, the Indian side, these sort of border standoffs would happen, and the Indian side would back down. But after 2014, and especially after 2015, we have not been backing down. We have been facing them off, the Chinese off. And the best example of that is Doklam, where our firm stance forced the Chinese to back off and go back to their own territory.
Right. So that was so that has shaped how these border skirmishes happen as well, right? Because how has that affected the Chinese psyche, if at all?
It has. See, China is at the height of the Doklam crisis standoff. We saw that the Chinese were making all sorts of threats. They were reminding us about 1962, saying that we should learn, we should take our lessons from that. No. But India ignored all that. In fact, the resolve of the Indian leadership was only strengthened by such threats, subtle and not so subtle. And I think what has happened is, but China, it learned. I don't know if it learned a lesson from Doklam, but China may be thinking, let us try a few more times and see how India reacts to this. These are like they would be constantly testing our resolve. Always. And the Chinese, I must tell you, Karan, here, the Chinese employ a very subtle and nasty trick to take away Indian territory, which is called called the salami slicing, as I say. They come into our territory, and there's a standoff well within our territory, well within Indian territory. And then when the standoff is resolved, they go back, but they don't go right back to their side. They go back maybe, they don't, just to take an example, they maybe go back a few 100 meters, but which is well within Indian territory. So they have added that part to their territory. But again, since it's not demarcated, what we do later on is the first opportunity, we send our patrols and we occupy that part. Again, reoccupy that part. So this is a constant cat and mouse game which goes on in that sort of terrain, in that inhospitable terrain that is the LAC.
Right. Just finally, last question. I was reading this Global Times report where they were quoting an expert as saying that since it got resolved at such a local level, maybe that spoke to the strength of a communication mechanism that is now in place. Do you see any truth to that?
Yeah, definitely. Like the agreements which are in place and the border mechanisms which are in place, they are now pretty good. They are pretty robust, and things can get resolved at that level. Finally, what happens is, like, maybe the battalion commander, at the battalion commander level, it gets resolved. At the most, it can escalate to the brigade commander level. And when the border meetings are held, they're very cordial. If it's held on the Indian side, there'll be. I have seen one such in Nathula a few years ago. And there's a lot of chai pakora, shikora and all that. And there's a lot of bonhomie. And they say, okay, you have done this. And that side says, oh, no, you have done this. And we exchange a bit of maps and all that. And said, okay, no, let's not get into all this. And let good sense prevail. And we are bhais and all that sort of thing. And it ends there. So, but, the purpose being not the chai pakora sort of thing, but to create a sort of a understanding between the troops on both the sides, so that it doesn't escalate much to an uncontrollable level.
Right. Great, Jaideep. Thanks so much for your insights.
Thank you.